down! Hello? I repeated. Who are you? One woman's voice said from the other side. Why are you asking me who I am? Who are you? I inquired. What was that of phoning me and ask who I was? Who was she phoning? Well then, I was that. How could she ask me who I was? I was I. After a deep silence and a bit before hanging up, the woman said with acidity, Let's leave the stupidity apart. I haven't heard from my daughter for 4 days, and I'm getting nervous. I told her that probably it was better she called her daughter, because I wasn't the lost and found daughters department. And maybe the police could help her, because they were paid for that. She said, with a lot of sarcasm, that she was very grateful for my invaluable help. That talking to the police idea had never crossed her mind. That thanks and thanks again, and that if I was able to leave my stupidity apart, maybe we could get to understand something. Not half. I hung up. Yes, I hung up. Of course I did. I hung up on a desperate mother that hadn't heard from her daughter for 4 days. And so what? I could recover jewels or vases, but not daughters. That wasn't my thing. That wasn't my responsibility. That wasn't concern of mine. Well, fine, okay. Remorse ruled me. I began to think about Sandra, who was also disappeared, and I found her back. The first beep not even sounded. Her name is Alicia, and I found this number next to the phone. It's the only thing she left at home, the woman said. Alicia? If she was the same Alicia I knew, the thing was not that important. She seemed to get on quite well, and to be bad-tempered enough not to be put up for long in case of kidnapping. I decided not to tell her this last thought because, counting how mums are, she would probably understand they would kill her instead of they would pay her for taking the sweet Alicia away from them, which I really wanted to mean. I told her I had met one Alicia that had been at my place because she suspected her husband was involved with one friend of mine, and that she seemed to get on well, but that I hadn't seen her again. She said I was right, but Alicia hadn't found her since she left, and she didn't answer the phone, and as she had that spoiled kid irresponsibility, maybe she had found a heartless man who saw her platinum visa and... I told her about the last time I had seen Alicia, and that she didn't seem easy to be had, and that my friend had also disappeared, the one she thought was involved with her husband. Maybe I shouldn't. Oh, what do you think? I think she thought her daughter had killed Sandra, but I didn't let her end the sentence just in case it was true, which I didn't believe it was. The woman despaired and started to tell me Alicia's entire life, from the moment she got married until the moment she stepped out of home. It was surprising my cell's battery lasted so much. When the woman began to cry, I promised her I would do all I could to find her daughter, and found her back, and so. Apart from the uncomfortable situation of the beginning and of the end, I got pretty interesting information. Andres' name was the most interesting of all. I had to go back to his place. I knocked several times, but nobody opened. I got my ear close to the door, and I could hear the telly and people cautious steps. I got as closer as I could, so embedded I was in the door that I almost looked like Spider-Man. I could hear it clearly. It was Glamorous Heart. I put my finger on the doorbell and I pressed until it dozed off. The finger, not the doorbell. It works at my place, but not at Andres. I was fed up of standing there and I called Salva. He was clear and concise. I got success. Don't disturb me. Screw the money. He was saying that in the frenzy of the moment. But once the fever had gone, you will see who was to be screwed and from where. I did what he told me to do. I left him alone. Of course, I had to pester someone, so I went to find Ramon. At the end, it was his entire fault, so it was he who had to solve it. He wasn't at the hotel, but as I was so dolled up, a great woman would say, they weren't very kind and told me they had given him a note with a date at 5 in the afternoon at the central shops. I had to get used to the blows again. The not button blows up thing worked better than the shouting. There is no comparison. The skirt also helped. To get information, maybe not so to the central shops. At 5 was a weird hour. Still tallied with the high tide, and I worked up it didn't low down until 7, what meant that until 8 the shops didn't start to open. Yes, that was the most beautiful hour because they lighted them with candles and relieved the smell of the sea with incense, which gave the place a magic atmosphere. The date at 5 meant he was going to meet someone from abroad, or someone that didn't go around there very often, which didn't make sense except he didn't want anybody to see them together. The son of a bitch was going to meet a married woman, an inexperienced married woman, because the time was a beginner's choice. He was going to meet Alicia. If Ramon was meeting Alicia, the one at Andres' place should be Sandra. It tallied with the glamorous hot thing, but not with the not opening the door thing. I called. I had my phone back. I called her. The number you are dialing is out of signal. If the one at the Andres had fallen asleep watching TV, Sandra always switched the phone off to watch the telly. I was almost relieved. At least was in a known place, and if she was kidnapped, they were treating her well. She had all she needed with the telly. I waited excited for the hour of the date. Excited and hidden. Ramon was the first. He was surprised the sea flooded it all. The water still surprised him. He was like the guy in the movie I Know Who You Are, that fell in love each time he saw his daughter. Of course, he had the excuse of his mental disease. The woman arrived half an hour later. She was a married woman for sure. She wore the wedding ring. I expected other kind of woman, but maybe I had never got to know him. That was why we never would be together. They greeted shaking hands, so maybe it was I who misunderstood the situation. The woman took an envelope out of the pocket and gave it to him with a clandestine gesture. He looked around and put the envelope into the inside pocket of his jacket. Then they started to walk. That made it harder for me to follow them, but one is an expert and they didn't get to shake me off. She walked looking ahead and Ramon was gesticulating forcefully. I couldn't hear what they said, even I was getting closer and closer. They stopped. An official car with dark windows and a car driver with a council badge on the lapel arrived. It wasn't that I had X-ray eyesight. It was that the guy got out of the car to open the woman's door. She got in and they vanished along the zero zone's abandoned streets. Ramon walked to the starting point. I went after him. The tide had lowered and inside the building the first candles were on. We still had to wet our feet to go in, but he didn't mind. Me neither. I had no choice. I actually minded, but I wanted to know what Ramon was doing. I plenty knew what I had to do, but I should thought about it for too long, and once inside, I lost him. He wasn't anywhere. Well, I was sure he was there. It still wasn't possible to go out through the back door. I went up the third floor and looked from the balcony how it all began to light up. How it was filling up with people, and the racket of the haggling died away the echo of an empty building. When I raised my head and looked to the front, Ramon was looking at me smiling. He was smiling with that smile that paralyzed and took neurons away because it made me forget all the bad things and enveloped him with an out of the ordinary air of magic, goodness and charm. Was it impossible to immunize against him then? It's easy with the low tide. I heard on my ear. I tried to see who he was, but a pair of huge arms cornered me against the banister, and a head didn't let me move mine. Anyway, I plenty knew who he was. Who is the woman you were talking to? That is not an information you need, he said again on my ear. But I really needed that information. In fact, I wanted that information, and so I let him know. He remained in silence, breathing on my neck. Maybe it was the magic of the place, or the horny he made me feel, but I couldn't even jiggle because I didn't want to spoil that paradisiacal feeling. Why don't we have anything? He said at last. I could say no, because it had been long since I was so close to happiness. But his head was not longer on my neck, and his arms not longer on the banister. The magic had vanished, so the best was to feed my stomach. I hadn't eaten for hours, and I supposed he was buying. I hoped. I ate like crazy. The cook looked at me badly. I almost ate all the portions she had done for the evening. Where does that way lead? He asked. To the wood, I answered. What do you mean? How is going to be a wood there? He said, skeptic. Of course there was a wood. We got up and left the central shops from the back door. The path wasn't very comfortable, but at least there wasn't rubble. It was getting dark, and Ramon's face was showing the panic they all showed the first time. I supposed to calm himself down, he began to tell the entire story. The day I received Andres' call, Ramon started to say, I began to think how my life would be if I hadn't left when I did. And the truth is that I felt homesickness. Plus the money issue. It always suits. Of course, I was tired of hearing stories about the amount of wealth buried. And the truth is that I didn't think Andres was serious. But Paco and Alberto felt like coming. They didn't know the city, and we could have a good time. We were walking slowly, jumping from stone to stone. The tide still hadn't totally lowered, and we did what the sea let us. I didn't used to go around there. There wasn't anything interesting to see. When I saw the easy it was to talk you into, I thought I was going to retire straight forward. And it even began to get into my head. There really was money. I must admit the zero song impressed me. I suppose it's the same face everybody had the first time. What forest do you say there is around here? And he kept on not minding my answer. The problems came afterwards. Sometimes I want to kill Andres, but friends are like that. They called me up from the central, the one here. It surprised me because nor Paco or Alberto were called, and we hadn't heard anything that deserved such an urgency either. I responded. Of course I did. It pissed me off. I was on holidays. I cannot take a break. Actually, what pissed me off more was they didn't call the others up too. What's up? Am I the village idiot? He didn't look at me. I was nodding. He kept on talking. The superintendent asked me why I had come. I thought it was weird. He plenty knew I was born here. I didn't tell him the truth. I told him it had been long since I saw my family and all that stuff. He looked stern and told me there was a person that wanted to speak with me. Someone from the council. I asked who it was, but he didn't answer. He only said I should have the phone on and I should answer when they called me without any delay and without any kind of excuse. Don't believe I'm scared of them. They paid me for availability, and even sometimes I pretend not to hear. I don't want them to suspend me either. One has to eat. Of course, yes. This man is one of these. They talk and then get cold feet as soon as the boss raises his voice. Sure he was. A cafe's revolutionary. Of course. They called me a few days later. It was a woman. There I thought the thing was getting interesting. And I was right, although not in the way I expected. On the first call, she only said her name was Maria, and we had to meet in a discreet place. You tell me if it wasn't to build up my hopes. When I saw her, I slowed down. It's not she was awful, but she's a bit overripe, in my opinion. You know what I mean. Not half. Of course I knew. Pig! She should be at a model to please the guy. The first she dropped was she knew I was involved in the treasure thing. I'm telling you, she said in the treasure thing, as she knew everything we had agreed with Andres. I denied it all. She probably had no proofs. Maybe Andres had let the deal out of the bag, which I had anticipated. Discretion, it's not one of his virtues. You can't say the contrary. And so what? Andres had let the cat out of the bag. In the treasure thing, I only had to say I was playing along with him. That I didn't believe it was true, and as you say, that it was a fairy tale for tourists. And that's that. But the woman didn't mean that. She knew everything, all and everything. That we had spoken with you, that you knew, Salva, your entire history, my entire history, our entire history. He said, pointing at us, referring to our relation. So I had to take her seriously. Yes, I took her seriously, but with caution. Especially when she began to tell me a story different from what Andres had told me. And even more, when her story, made more sense than the undress. I almost didn't know where I was stepping on. The water reached my knee. I was intrigued. At last I could know the truth, all the truth, and only the truth. That, or it was another story Ramon was telling to make me go to the basement again. But it was so interesting. Andres had told me his counselor friend wanted the money and so. That he had real knowledge it was there, and that, even we shared it out, there was a lot. That worked for me. There were some unsolved questions as, why now? And some more, but who thinks about that trivialities in such moments? The so-called Maria was counselor of culture and told me plainly she only was interested in taking revenge on the counselor of town planning for leaving her department without budget. That she would get all the information I needed, and that she wanted that, by all means, the counselor didn't get the money. That if there was money, it should remain down there, and that if she had to pay me the same sum I found, she was prepared to do it. I had no idea about how much money should be into the Universal Savings Bank safe, but I doubted that a counselor of culture could equal the figure. She noticed my distrust and signed a substantial check I have already cashed, and that far makes up for the money you took out from down there. I almost killed him! What for had he stolen my money if he already had the check? He deserved to be killed, murdered, decapitated. Why did you steal my money then? I said angry, since I couldn't put up any more. Do you mean the money you stole, and you tried to keep it all and not share it with us? Ramon asked with sarcasm. Of course, we did all the work. He interrupted me, breathing patience in, and kept on with the story. As you will know, money doesn't bring happiness, and what makes Maria happy is the counselor doesn't get the Universal Savings Bank money. And above all, the Universal Savings Bank basement remains as always. I suppose you get it, he said as it was obvious what I was going to get. I see you don't. I took long too. Why was so important a basement among all of the basements of the Zero Zone that had been abandoned for so long? The importance is crystal clear, especially if the Chancellor of Town Planning is involved, isn't it? And you should know it better than me. You people from the Zero Zone were expropriated, owed to the declaration of disaster area and so. Most of them were happy and satisfied and don't even remember the flood of the center of the city, or the traffic noise, or the dust cart at 5 in the morning along the narrow streets. On the other hand, we have, of course, that other people, you for example, that liked to disagree, and you are always wandering around the Zero Zone. The truth is that you aren't that important in this story either. If you didn't take the compensation and you still live in your houses even without electricity and running water, and even the sea comes out through the drains, what a thing, your problem. Before we had those slums and now we have you. Though you are less annoying because you don't go out of the ghetto and you are kind of a tourist attraction. When they get tired of you, they find something to put you in prison, which is easy. And that's all. Was the money an excuse to put us in jail? I asked. Are you in jail? I'm saying you are not that important. Just a tile of the jigsaw. A fringe benefit. As if you have an aspirin to cure a headache and it cures a pain in your toe. You know what I mean. Are you pretty bad informed? Or do you know the deadline to refund the compensations is about to expire? Maybe not. You don't have anything to refund. And as it's obvious, nobody used such a privilege. Who's going to dive in such a well of rubble? As you should also know, once the deadline has passed, the council becomes the legitimate and official owner of all that land. It becomes public, so to say. Little Venice, I interrupted. I see you are informed, he said. I have heard about it, but I thought it was one of the mayor's eccentricities, or a rumor of these that go round to make fun of him. It was quite possible. But even though that wouldn't be the most important part of the story, because the improvements are being made no matter what. The plenary session approved the town plan a few days after they finished the compensations payments. And not only because the mayor wanted to, but because the people that had put the funds as a guarantee demanded it. It's clear that they didn't give them for free. You're probably wondering what the strong room has to do with this all. Of course I was. When the Universal Savings Bank accepted the multi-million euro compensation, as you can imagine, they had to renounce everything they had left there. And as you also know well, not everybody who renounced are prepared to really do it. They weren't in a hurry. I mean, they couldn't do it before because they had to wait for the legal deadline, not to give explanations. The truth is that they didn't count on you were so fast. At least, it's what I think. Because I didn't, and Maria either. That's why we had to take it back to the depths, so to say. He looked at me, half in a patronizing way, half calling me idiot. Not to anybody could tell. Luckily for me, you weren't telling the money thing all around. So nobody knows the money really exists. You got to take it out. And it was in the street, within whoever reach. Are you telling me a councillor of culture revenge can be so twisted? She even isn't going to recover what she gave you in that check, according to you. I said. The thing is not as simple as stealing money. Part of the safe's content was the Councillor Commission for granting the work to the Universal Savings Bank building company. And the most important of all was a briefcase that was among the ones you took out and the ones you didn't take out. The briefcase contains a very specific information that apparently can change the course of events, he said with mystery. I laughed, not at all bothered, thinking he was teasing me. Don't laugh, you have to go down there again, and took out all the briefcases you left the other time, he said quite seriously. I didn't leave any. We made a big effort to take them all, I said. I'm serious, he said. Hey, stop threatening. And by the way, where is Sandra? If you dare hurt her, you will get what for. Are you listening? I said also quite seriously. Sandra? I don't know. She probably is somewhere with Paco. Last time I saw her was at your window, and now you mention it, I neither have seen Paco again. Paco is a kind of loving, so maybe he convinced her to go on a honeymoon. He said very suggestive. It's weird, I said. Then what did you are going to lose more than you can afford stand for? I didn't mean it, Sienna. I can't believe you still don't know me. He answered, playing it down. I do know you, yes I do. Why did you leave me there laying on a bench in front of the folding helicopter's cache? I asked. I didn't leave you laying anywhere. While we were dancing, you fainted. I say faint, to be kind, because you were really drunk. I took you home. I left you there, on your bed, alone, as far as I know. Sure, I said, looking at him right inside the eye to guess if he was lying. My first instinct was believe him, but I was surprised to see how unperturbed he listened, folding helicopters, without turning a hair, as it was the most natural. What is more, I hadn't drunk a single drop of alcohol, and I didn't faint, or maybe I did, but against my will. Where is that forest you told me? He asked, changing subjects, trying to play my abandoned down. We are arriving, I said. How is it possible there is a forest here? He said. There is. Do you remember the Mendez Núñez Gardens? I asked. Fuck you off. That's not a forest, he said with contempt. Sure not. That's not a good. But nobody knows why a species from New Zealand, a huge tree full of roots that lived on the gardens, started reproducing, multiplying, and spreading. The old dogs are now a forest, almost a jungle. So you say. And why cannot it be seen from Santa Cristina? Of course you can see it, but with the high tide, it looks like a garden, I said with mystery. I'm looking forward to seeing it, he said with incredulity. The truth is that we took it easy. From the central shops to the good, it didn't took more than 15 minutes, walking quickly and without many paddles. But Ramon wasn't able to walk and talk at the same time. He could if he used short sentences. But when he kept the time of the story, he stopped to explain himself. As he couldn't do two things at a time, or as if with his emphasis wanted to convince me the story he was telling me was true. What are we doing now? Maria asked. We are going to do what we have to do, Carmen said. Maria knew Carmen was serious. She would go as far as it required, even though she wasn't sure it was appropriate to get too involved in the situation. At the end, she had personal reasons that could increase the cruelty of the revenge. Josefa was looking at them in silence. She agreed with her colleagues, but she didn't want to get involved in a story that seemed to take up too much time. At the end, it was a conspiracy, and her years of civil service taught her that, as much as spare time they had, there were things they could only be done at night. And also, thanks to her wide experience, she knew that at night she had better things to do. Don't take it on the personal level, Maria said. Carmen didn't even pay attention. She punched the window, making it clear that, of course, she took it on the personal level. It was personal. Perez had it in for her. He enjoyed each dirty trick, and until then, he always had won. But the time to stop him had come, and if the justice didn't do it, she would. She didn't know well how, but she would find a way, and stood there thinking, staring at the opposite balcony. Maria was walking nervously from one side to the other. "Maybe it's a silly thing, but..." Josefa said. "But?" Maria asked, excited. "But maybe there is not tsunami at all," Josefa said. "Of course, and maybe there is," Carmen said, going out of the trance. "Sure," Josefa said. Carmen knew quite well there was a chance, but everything pointed out it would. And they had to be ready. As soon as they signed the expropriations, it would be late to act. "There has to be something we are not seeing," Maria said. "I don't give a damn. They can keep it all. I don't mind. I'm going to live my life and stop worrying. When people complain about the school's bad conditions, they will give me the money I'm entitled to," she said, resigned. "Yes, or they will blame you for everything. They will request your resignation, and you just can say goodbye to your career," Carmen said. Josefa saw for the first time in the entire morning the need for her to get involved in the business. "Well, right, if things are like that, they will get what for," Josefa said. "The first we had to guess is who is going to guarantee the compensations. That is where the business is." "Guarantee?" Maria asked. "Is it necessary?" "Of course it is," Carmen confirmed, even she had no idea what she was talking about. Before the coffee time, they sat down in front of the window and stared at the square with a kind of homesickness, of missing, of "it was beautiful." And they tried to imagine it flooded or destroyed by the waves. And they sighed disenchanted. At the coffee hour, they plotted the spying plan. They would talk to Noelia from administration. She would talk to Argimiro from the caretakers. That knew... And they spun a net that it seemed more Camarines lace by the fine they knitted it. The aim of the net was to have access to every document signed, to everything the Councillor of Town Planning signed, in and out of the council, in and out of the legality, in and out of wherever God wanted. As a good work of art, the net's value increased in time. They collected so much information they had to rent a flat as operation center because the volume of papers began to arouse suspicions. And as a good work of art, in time, it made them very happy. At last it happened. The Universal Savings Bank guaranteed the compensations, and crossing dates and names and codes, they found a whole series of fax, emails, and notes that set a direct relation between the Councillor of Town Planning and the Universal Savings Bank's manager. There were three ways of action: the official one, which was the one of the guarantee; the unofficial, which was the one of the granting the Little Venice works to the Universal Savings Bank manager's construction company; and the illegal, we are going to call it plainly like that. The granting of the works had a double direction, one from the council to the bank to thank the guarantee, and one from the bank's manager to the councillor to thank the granting. In short, they all were very grateful. They had decided the best way to channel all that amount of undeclared incomes was leaving it abandoned there deep down, into the strong room. It was practically impossible. the insurance would cover the loss, so it wouldn't cost a cent to the bank, and the councillor only had to wait a pair of years, thing that came in handy because it gave him time to create the fake companies he needed to channel the millions he was going to receive. And then we had the way out, the one Carmen, Maria and Josefa needed. The deeds all the people that had taken the compensations and the exchanges for the evacuation moves from the zero zone gave to the council. Those that give the council the property of all the zero zone, the ones they had to protect with their lives, those which in exchange for a few 5 millions of euros the three councillors' accomplices and the Councillor of Town Planning Strater had hid among the suitcases with the millions of euros that were going to remain sealed by the tsunami water. What does it mean they are into the Universal Savings Bank safe? Kame asked hysterical. This guy is stupid, completely and absolutely stupid, Josefa said. He was counting the money and, as all the suitcases look alike, when he saw them all closed, he didn't know where the papers were, and he was not going to open them. He didn't want to arouse suspicions. Maria said with understanding. He didn't want to, useless. In this fat council, there are all a bunch of useless. Can you not count on anybody? Isn't there anybody who can do things right? Carmen muttered. It was true. They had paid him for bringing the papers, discreetly, but for bringing the deeds to them. They even got a little box of these the big businessmen in some companies of dubious ethics had. It wasn't they liked it, but, of course, it was the safest. It would be rare someone missed the deeds. All the contracts were signed, and they would only need them in case of complaint, which was not very likely because, in spite of nobody thought about the tsunami as an event with a real chance of happening, people were in a hurry to leave, especially since there was a rumor going round that the most important tycoon had done it yet. So, it was not likely the guys of town planning realized the documents were missing. And in the moment Little Venice started to run, they took out the deeds, demanding the land and obtaining an obscene amount of dash. This was the point where the debate intensified. Maria said it was better took out the deeds at the beginning of the works, so they had to pay them if they wanted to start with the pickle. I must say that they didn't use words as dosh, pickle. It's me who uses them to summarize all the thing. Carmen said she didn't see it clear. If they took the deeds at the beginning, they might decide not to do the works, so it would be better to take them out in the middle, when they were well into the works, so the only way to take some profit out of there was paying them. Josefa, who didn't get upset easily, said that if they waited for the works to be half done, and they asked for more money than the half had cost, the others were not going to pay, so appear in the middle of the works would limit the money they would ask for. The best, according to Josefa, was wait until it was all finished, just about to open. So if they didn't give the dosh, they became the legal owners of the Little Venice, and therefore more than stinking rich, with the future insured and being the envy of the jet set. Maria said it was a good reasoning, but they would spend ages on cards, and they even ran the risk of the justice looked under the blindfold and lost out. It doesn't matter that Clancy put his foot in it, and we don't have anything, Carmen said disappointed. Even, Maria was about to say, even nothing, Carmen interrupted. Even nothing, no, Josefa intervened. If the deeds are with the money, and only we and Clancy know where they are, we only have to wait until they take all the suitcases and steal the one with the deeds. They don't know the deeds are there. They are not looking for them. We will. And how are we going to rescue that specific briefcase? Carmen asked with a kind of relief. We'll see. If it goes as planned, we have plenty of time to think it well, Josefa answered. The Clancy will keep his mouth shut, won't he? Yes, he's not interested in this business. He wanted the money and he's going to ask for an extended leave and make a filming course. It seems he always wanted to be an artist, or so. He's not making troubles, Maria said. Fine, Carmen said. If the faces of the people that saw the zero song for the first time were of amazement, the face of the people that saw the good for the first time was indescribable. I suppose it's the same feeling you have when you are dead and you find out you can cross the walls, or when Neo played with the liquid metal mirror. The feeling of changing worlds, or so to speak, of having a foot in the other world. But what the hell? Ramon said without strength to end the sentence. The last afternoon sun almost couldn't go through the branches of those huge trees. He had the excuse of being a beginner on the subject, not me, and even though I made the same mistake everybody made in front of that spectacle, because that was the only name that could do justice, a spectacle of a spectacular. Let's go, I said defiant. Where? He asked, shocked. When I said to the wood, he looked at me with Jean-Petit face. An adorable face. Too much temptation not to give in. Without leaving him any alternative, I entered into the depth of the forest. He looked behind, studying the alternatives. It even seemed to me he was turning round, but he wasn't. He looked at me again and began to walk indecisive. I was confident. I don't know why. I had never been alone into the wood. I neither remembered the last time I had walked among the green giants. Of course, they weren't as giant or as many as the ones I had in front of me in that moment. But Ramon's weakness made me stronger. As a parasite that lives on its host. I imagine my idea was to scare him until he confessed all he had to confess. At the end, it was what they used to do. Just instead of locking him into a room with a mirror, I got him into a lively wood. And it worked. The conversation was trivial. This is impressive. The ground doesn't seem too much firm. The air seems so pure. How beautiful the sunlight looks among the leaves. And I cannot determine the moment he confessed that he had took me in. That Sandra was with Paco, held. Even she wasn't quite conscious because they two were with that silly thing of love, and it was easy to take her in. He didn't say a word about Salva. It wasn't necessary. The shameless would be with the helicopter's handsome. He told me about the suitcase they were after, and what he did with the others he had stolen from me. I thought you told me you had given them back to the depths, I said. Officially I did, That's what the counselor believes. But as you will understand, it's a big loss through that money down there. Especially if I can keep it in a safe place and enjoy a peaceful retirement. He should notice it on my face. On mine, the one he had. Of course I understood. That was the retirement I had planned for me. That's a laugh. Don't look at me like that, he said serious. I didn't want to use you. Ha! It came out without meaning. Seriously, we divided money 4 ways and I didn't even touch my share, he said with some kind of affectation. Sure, you still haven't time. I don't know how you managed to count and share it out in not more than a day, I said. He smiled, sincere. He said, laughing, they didn't count it. They only shared it out roughly. I told him I wasn't going down to the basement again, that there wasn't anything left, and that I didn't feel like they caught me red-handed and thought I had stolen all the doors that wasn't supposed to be there. That's all I needed. Made all the work, being broke, and being the one to blame. He said he understood. Andres was also worried about the counselor's reaction when he realized the suitcases were missing. But he also said it would happen as later as possible. He changed the tone of his speech. He began to remind me the first Ramon I had met. That funny, natural and sincere guy that made you feel you had found what you were looking for. Yes, fine. I had a crush on him again. It might be the chlorophyll. I fell. That's it. One is not perfect. The dream of love made me got more lost into the forest, and any chance of going out that remotely could exist in my head vanished automatically. I didn't know it. The I was lost thing. I kept on walking on the cloud of magic surrounding since I had went into the central shops that evening. You know, he said, grabbing my arm to make me look at him. I think you are right. I looked at him surprised. Not because he had said I was right, that of course had surprised me, but because I didn't know what he was talking about. Thinking it carefully, I believe you are right. There is nothing left in the safe, he said, looking around. Listen, you know where we are going, don't you? Sure, of course I know, I said, pretending self-confidence. I had not a clue, but the I was right thing was very interesting. She thinks their accomplice put the deeds in one of the suitcases, that he cocked it up. And right now, if I had to choose between you are mistaken and he cocked it up, I think I will choose he cocked it up, but not in the way the counselor believes. That's not fine for me, Alberto said as he heard Ramon's plan. The others looked at each other. He was serious, as he really didn't see the point. Ramon looked up. He didn't attach importance. Paco and Andres agreed with him, so they decided to go ahead. Paco, far from objecting, was jumping for joy. He didn't like lying to Sandra, but it was a lesser evil compared to an infinite number of days next to her. It wouldn't be difficult for Andres to keep Alicia busy. He believed he had lost his charm, that there wasn't chemistry between them. But he would find a way. If he had to exploit the cheating husband thing, he would. But Alicia was going to fall again, or he stopped being who he was. Alberto, got up and left. He went for a walk. With friends like that, who wanted enemies? Yes, well, Paco with Sandra, Andres with Alicia, and Ramon was going to the hotel to leave a room at Andres' place. So he had to play gooseberry with the randy detective and the merry divorced, and with the lovely Teddy Bears couple. Well, no, he was not willing to do it. And what really drove him mad was that Ramon didn't even realize that he hadn't think about him not a single second. And what drove him even madder was that he thought of Paco in the first place. What's the matter with you? Ramon asked behind him. What's the matter with me? Alberto repeated sulked. Ramon looked at him with the face he looked at his girlfriends when they got a bit hysterical. Don't you look at me like that! You plenty know what I'm talking about! Alberto said indignant. Ramon wide opened his eyes. Had to focus for a while because he really had the feeling the lover of the night before was making a scene. You don't know it. Seriously. Don't wait for me to tell it to you. Think about it. And he started to walk, leaving Ramon behind. Behind and speechless. He has a hope. I have a lot to worry about, but this guy's paranoias. And he went back home. Alberto kept on walking for a while. Of course, he didn't pay attention to the way and got lost. It was crystal clear he was going to get lost. Luckily, he had the phone to call for help because it didn't occur to him to learn the name of the street where Andres lived either. While he was waiting for Ramon to arrive, and it might be he was ashamed of the situation, he thought about the plan from another point of view. He saw it as a plan, like always, like the ones they used to lunch. He forgot about Paco. At last, he had played the most important role. He got to infiltrate with success in our group without aroused suspicions. Alberto wasn't surprised because Paco was so naive nobody could think he acted in bad faith. He smiled. At the end, he smiled. He thought about it from the money point of view and saw it clear. He didn't get a woman, but he neither had work to do, just money to receive. Ramon stopped the car as soon as he saw Alberto, who was sitting down on a building entrance and he could hardly see his head. Ramon almost thought he had left and wasn't going to stop. Hey, listen, go ahead with the plan, Alberto said as he got into the car. I'm glad you think that way, because we have to lunch it today, Ramon said. Today? Alberto asked, surprised. Yes, Paco phoned Sandra to have a drink, and she said she and Salvador were making crepes in the street. Ramon said, Ah? Alberto said, not understanding. Ramon turned the radio on and kept on driving just like that. Aren't you going to tell me what does making crepes in the street mean? What is it? The plan's code? What the hell are you talking about? Don't you count on me anymore? Alberto asked, hysterical. Ramon turned the radio off and looked at him with that look of freezing the blood to make him shut up once and for all before that feeling of the night before lover Alberto had made him feel hours ago came back. Alberto got it. He didn't need explanations or clarifications of any kind. He remained quiet and looking to the front as a good kid. According to Paco, Sandra and Alicia are at Sienna's place. Andres is not certain of getting off with Alicia, so by now, Paco is in charge of the larks. And you and I have to look after Sienna and Salva. Well, I after Sienna. Ramon said. How is that? What are you telling me? I had to snog the gay? Alberto asked, going back to the hysterical tone. And Andres what? He takes the dose and that's that? Ramon took a deep breath. That's right, Alberto. Andres takes the money. As you can understand, if we set all this up, is to take the money. Someone has to take it, he said serious. But do they have it yet? Alberto said excited. Did they take it out? When? Well, I don't know. We suspected they did. You just know how hot the girl is, Ramon said. Who? Sienna? Alberto asked, confused. What's the matter with you? Is not the oxygen at A Coruña enough for you or what? Ramon said angry. Sandra, the one Paco talked to, the one that told him the other two were making crepes in the street. The crepes in the street again! But what kind of metaphor is this? Alberto said. Ramon took another deep breath. What the hell metaphor are you talking about? They set a stall up in the street because they couldn't take up the tables they took out from the basement and they didn't want to leave them alone in the street. That was what Sandra told Paco, literally. Do you get it? Ramon shouted. And what for does Sienna want 2 tables if she doesn't have a room at her place? Alberto said. Ramon looked at him, stopped the car and double parked, switched the engine off, took a deep breath, and he said very gently, You are going to come with us and do all we tell you to do, and that's all. Alberto looked at him, not understanding, but very conscious. Sure, I'm going to snog the so-called Salva. The minimum chance I've got, I'm skiving. And this man can make a threesome if he wants to. He was saying to himself, looking at Ramon starting the car from the corner of his eye. He spent the whole trip pretending a calm he didn't have because he knew it had to be that way. Ramon had spoken to him seriously, and it wasn't convenient to make him angry. The last time Ramon spoke slowly, he ended carrying out all the rates of all the industrial estate's brothels. Quiet. Quiet, he thought, the way to disappear just like that. But he couldn't. Ramon took him grabbed up to my street, and he didn't let him go out until Andres and Paco were next to the car. What's going on? Alberto asked. He says you want to skive, Andres said, pointing at Ramon. I'm not going to snog the gay no matter what. Keep the money for yourself. Alberto shouted. He made a short pause. No, you'd better give me the money. I have already done my part of the job. Did you do what? Andres said upset. You did nothing. Down the volume. They are going to hear, Ramon said. Then they walked, not at all bothered, towards the crepe stall. Paco remained beyond the discussion. He was thinking about Sandra. If she looked at him right into the eyes, she would find out he was lying to her, and about how to put in order his ideas not to be discovered. He sighed each time he listened his name in Sandra's mouth. In the moment Ramon approached to speak with me, Alberto stepped backwards to lose sight of Salva. He even thought Paco was a good candidate when he saw him so involved tasting the crepes. And when Andres gave a damn about the plan and told him to live with those beauties, he breathed with relief. It didn't last. Relief wasn't such a thing, One phone call clarified all his doubts. Apart from what had clarified them, seeing that a crepe was a crepe, and that's that. Ramon told them the hen, he meant me, was at the hen house already, and that the chickens, he meant Sandra and Alicia, were at the chicken house already. He said it just like that. Alberto looked at Andres from the corner of his eye. He really regrets not taking part into the Necor operation, he said with sarcasm. Andres was apathetic. Once he had someone to spend the night with, he didn't mind if she was Alicia or other. This time was other, and he didn't see the need of changing the partner either. But there was. In that moment, Andres got rid of the beauty theorists and looked very serious at Alberto to focus on the business. "It's our turn now," he said with a solemn voice. He dialed a phone number and said things like oblique propeller, half tone, maximum power, upright fold, and when he hung up, said "let's see how long they take," and pulled Alberto out of the bar, dragging him again to the tables street. My tables. That was all the explanation Alberto received. When they arrived at the street, it was pitch dark, dead silent. The headlights warned them just in time to pull the brake. Alberto got worked up by the braking, by the darkness, and by the silence. Andres not even paid attention to him. Alberto was going to turn the radio on, and a punch on the hand made him realize that Andres didn't feel like. He got out of the car. He could smell the sea. He looked around nervous. Suddenly, he thought the sea was at his feet, like a treacherous emptiness that was going to devour him as soon as he dropped his guard. He could only see, on the line of the car's lights, the tables and the darkness. Suddenly, he heard an intermittent noise in the distance, constant and monotonous. He thought it was his watch. He looked to his wrist. No, his was digital. He put it close to the ear. It might make noise anyway. The noise became louder. He looked back to his wrist, shocked, alarmed, as fast as he could, undid the clasp and threw the watch away. Andres stared at the darkness without willing, not at all bothered. The noise now was obvious. Alberto was still looking to the ground, terrified, waiting that at any moment that second-hand watch bought to some desperate guy went off, mowing his life. He closed his eyes and raised his head to smell the air for the last time. It smelled of sea. He breathed again. He felt inner peace and opened the eyes. He saw a blinding light, just like the one they described on the mystery radio programs his parents listened when he was little. They didn't say anything about the appalling noise that came with it, but that might be the interference of that watch that, far from being stolen as he had always suspected, was fake. He felt ripped off, not because of the noise, but because the 30 euros he had paid. The swine that had sold it should be grateful those were his last minutes. because he could knock his teeth out with a well-deserved punch. The light was going down to the ground. Stop him being so blinding. Stop him being over him. Leaving Alberto without a mystic experience from the profound Galicia to tell his parents. Andres got out of the car without spirits, just like the entire day, apathetic. It seems you work by the hour. You are slower than the horse of the villain. He belched out. Take it easy, man. A figure coming out of the light said, as Alberto would say, from the helicopter, we say, because we just knew it was a helicopter. Are these the bundles? That's all? A smaller one would be enough. Do we take them to the warehouse and wait for new instructions? Yes, Andres ordered. In what way then? I asked. What do you think? Ramon answered, looking at me right into the eyes. Well, with the record you all have, probably he mistook the poor devil. And he put the papers, I don't know, into his own suitcase. I said with sarcasm. Exactly, he said as I had discovered the gunpowder. The truth is that it was to be expected. They couldn't expect seriously the other was going to do the job just like that, I said. Ramon seemed to be surprised I didn't trust the sole accomplice, and, believe it or not, he even reached the point of saying I was always thinking the worst of people. The truth is that, to be all them, half criminals, they were a bunch of amateurs. We'll have to find the civil servant, Ramon said. We will, I said. If we finally get out of here, he said with sarcasm, looking around. The truth is that, even if he said it without sarcasm, he would be right. I had no idea where we were walking on, with the additional problem of the tide coming in, which was leading us more and more inside the wood. Probably it was throwing us out to dry land. But the only thing we could see were trees and more trees. I even got to think the city had grown. The darkness was more and the water were reaching more the hill. How much is going to come in? Ramon asked, looking to the ground. I don't feel like dying drowned, he said seriously. If I could see the watch, I would tell you when it lows. But the truth is that I had no idea. I don't know where we are or where we have to go out for. I said without intention of saying it, because I meant to make some joke over the coward men were when they were taken out of his natural habitat. And you just see what came out. Luckily, the darkness didn't let me see his face. But with that deep sighs he made, I could notice quite well he was angry. Luckily, too, he couldn't see my neck either, because if he could, he had already strangled me, I'm pretty sure. Well, I'm fed up of walking yet, he said. So you'd better find a place to spend the night. I don't walk anymore, Christ! These last words were said raising the volume, without pretending to let me know he was really upset. I couldn't do much. I couldn't see anything. I almost didn't feel my feet, because the atmosphere was hot, but the water was so cold, and we had been walking wet for a while. I even couldn't tell when we walked dry. He stopped, as the little kids when they say they don't want to walk, so you had to carry them. I don't know if this was what he wanted. I wasn't too, of course. Maybe the other way around. When you find the civil servant, what are you going to do? I asked to keep him amused, to break that awkward silence. He didn't say a word. I saw a clearing. The moonlight let us see a kind of crack. I went there. I didn't say anything to him. I was going in an explorer way. I wanted to see where we were and drop it to him naturally, and not to make the impression I had no idea, as I actually hadn't. He came after me, without a deep breath, without a noise. In fact, I thought he had stood down. "Hey, this is the dike," Ramon said behind me. Yes, it was, of course. We were on the cracks at the end of the dike. We had been walking over the docks, and the fabric the roots had waved, I supposed. Ramon sat down quiet, without any reproach. I sat down next to him. "I don't know," he said. I looked at him, not knowing what he was talking about. "I mean, I don't know what I will do when I find the civil servant," he said, looking at me. "Screw yourself, because I don't think he's going to give you the deeds," I said. "I don't think I'll find him. I don't think Maria trusted a nobody. It's weird," he said half-heartedly. "What is weird is that you didn't think about it before. At least you have the money. Well, the ones of you that have it." I really had a chip on my shoulder. He put his arm on my shoulder and got closer. "You are still angry," he said, sniggering. I didn't bother to answer. The guy said if I was still angry, seriously. If the full moon hadn't prevented it, I would plot right there how to steal the money from him again and see how fine it suited him. "There is more than money in this world," he said. I didn't punch him on the face because I had an arm immobilized, and with the other I couldn't reach where I wanted. I was looking at him from the corner of my eye, upset. He was looking at me into the face. He got a bit closer. "The night is beautiful tonight, isn't it?" he said. He got a bit closer. His face brushed mine. I looked at him from the corner of my eye. He had to become his father-in-law's inseparable friend and find the so-called Andres. That in one hand. In the other, he had to find Salva. He had to reach the money before the councillor, because once the councillor touched the dosh, there wouldn't be any chance to recover it. It seemed to him his father-in-law didn't trust Andres very much. And he wasn't surprised. Of course, he had the perfect excuse to contact him. Salva's case. That pro bonus case he had accepted without will was bringing the benefit of the opportunity. In one side, Sandra. In the other, Salva. And in the other, Andres. Salva picked up the phone at the first tone. He was waiting for the ruling, and he couldn't allow himself the luxury of not answering. He answered with anxiety. At first, Carlos didn't realize where Salva's nervousness came from, and suspected he knew his dark motivation. Thank goodness a few "How are you doing? Fine, thanks," made him understand, because none of them were able to say a word. Salva, because he didn't want to jinx the thing. He was convinced he was going to jail. And Carlos didn't want to say anything, because he plenty knew explanations not required, fault admitted. And he wanted the issue to come out as natural as that day at the cafe. He got Salva agreed to meet him that night. The time didn't seem suitable for him, but Salva went hysterical and wanted to meet him right then. The Andres thing needed more planning. He had to go to the office and find his lawyer's phone, and with whichever legal excuse take him in. Yes, he had all well planned. He surpassed his father-in-law in knowing the other part without the need of the middleman, and even though he could resort to them to waste time. In that point of his reasoning, he thought it would be better to keep the distance with the so-called Andres, just in case he let the business out of the bag with his father-in-law and he smelled a rat. Salva took advantage of the Carlos call to skip the crepes, because he had been working the whole evening and he couldn't take his footache anymore. He was getting calluses and it was hard to get rid of them. And he refuses to let his perfect feet go. In a first moment, he was panicked. He not even noticed it was too late for official announcements. The fear didn't let him think clearly. It didn't let him think clearly about the gear of the phone call either. Carlos was already at the bar. Salma almost didn't recognize him without the designer suit he always wore, and without the hair that fixed it, that unfashionable quiff, leaving a place for a fringe very indie that took away from him the snooty posh, remaining only the posh. He was cute. Salva thought suddenly stopping worrying. He sat down at the table and began a friendly talk based on Carlos' new look. Carlos welcomed the subject. Seeing the hysteria had disappeared, he went into the friendliness and the joke. And joke after joke, and taking advantage of Salva's mouth of crepes, and that he had said he was fed up of tourists, dropped the treasure thing. Between laugh and triviality, Salva finally told him everything, completely everything. In his defense, we will say he was euphoric and tired. Two conditions that decreased the attention, as they said in the traffic department's commercials. It wasn't that important either, because Carlos thought the money had been left laying around on the street thing was a joke, especially after Salva had also said his wife was sleeping at the place from the zero zone, which was quite incredible. So he took his victim's statement with the due precaution. Afterwards, they went to the partying zone, Salva because he kept up with the rhythm, Carlos just for pretending. While he was about it, he needed exactly a pair of minutes to get lost and leave Salva alone. Actually, it was Salva who got rid of him, without meaning. It's that the night absorbs him. Carlos took the chance to go to my building, with all the discretion he could get. Not because he minded someone could see him around there, but because he didn't want to face Alicia. In the unlikely case, she was there. He felt betrayed when he arrived and saw there wasn't anything in the street. There wasn't the party Salva had said, or the tables, or the briefcases. Not even the truck. There had been anything ever. Just for the sake of it, because he didn't believe Salva had lied to him like that, particularly because Salva was a bad liar and he hadn't noticed not a single tick. He went up to my place. It was silent. He leaned the ear against the door. He didn't knock to check if there was someone inside. He still was afraid of the idea of an unpleasant meeting with Alicia. As he was going down, he went into every floor just in case we had taken up the goods. He was a bit disappointed when he saw we hadn't, but also felt a bit of trust, seeing the dragging motor was there, what Salva had said. With conflicting feelings, he went back to the loneliness of his home. And the loneliness mixed with the night let the mind fly with too much freedom. He grabbed his briefcase, took out his diary, and phoned Andres' lawyer. The lawyer gave him the phone number. Of course he did. He had better things to do than argue at hours about such a stupidity and over such a client that made him earn a lot, but he always involved him in such pickles. Andres picked up the phone because he thought it was a client, and the helicopter thing was half resolved. The biggest problem he had to deal with was Alicia, and it neither was a sacrifice. Carlos didn't plan the strategy before calling. That is other thing the darkness without undercover has. They should go together as a good aggravating. He stuttered at the beginning, but he quoted some points /6 from the penal code and Andres got tired of listening and hung up on him. In that moment, he was glad he hadn't said his name, nor who he was, and there it went along the phone line, all his professional prestige. What he understood from the phone call, the only and the most important thing, was that feminine voice so familiar he could hear on the background. The counselor didn't know what he had said and what he hadn't, but he plenty knew he had let the cat out of the bag. He had that cheating on his wife feeling, that feeling of informing on himself before his wife realized. Actually, Carmen only needed to look at him from the corner of her eye just for 1,000th of a second to know the hair dice number of the woman he had been involved with the night before. But the poor devil's innocent imperiousness understood it like that. The thing is that he had that uneasiness feeling. He had to talk to Andres to see how the thing was going, although he didn't feel like because he had to act like a protective father. He took a breath and phoned. He felt a kind of relief when he didn't answer, and after 3 black coffees, he called his friends to go out. Andres interrupted him. He said it wasn't necessary he controlled him because he knew perfectly what he had to do. And as he had taken the trouble, she should know the thing was well softened up, that they would call him back as soon as they counted the money. If he had on his mind ending in the Venus, since he had heard that news, he would end there for sure. Andres hung up with the anger you hang up on a relentless, annoying boss, and kept on monitoring the helicopter maneuvers into the hangar. He monitored it with impatience. The machines turned off and the silence was reassuring. "Did you open the briefcases?" Ramon asked, coming in through the door with a sad look. "So, you just got rid of Gianna?" Andres said, not taking the eyes off the briefcases. Ramon didn't answer. He approached the pile of briefcases and began to open them. Alberto went the other way around. Andres didn't move. "Are there as many as—" he asked. "Come here, give a hand, and in the meanwhile you count them," Ramon answered with coldness. Andres did what he told him because that wasn't a witty answer. It was an order, and yes, there were as many as they had told them. He wasn't able to understand the deception on Ramon's face or the longing he had to open all the briefcases. When they finished, Andres said he had to phone the counselor and Ramon stopped him. He asked why he had done it, and just when Ramon was going to answer and solve all his doubts, the cell phone rang. Not his, mine. I don't want not even imagine how it got into his pocket. But the truth is that it didn't require too much effort to guess how. One of us was light-fingered during the unconsciousness period of the dancing. Ramon looked who it was. On the screen appeared Sandra. He hung up the call to make it look like I was busy. Afterwards, he deleted all the files and kept it in the pocket again. It seems that Paco isn't doing very well his part. Go and help him, Ramon said. Andres and Alberto looked at each other with complicity. And what are you going to do? Alberto asked with distrust. Ramon said nothing. He said he was going to go for a walk. They didn't trust him. They were afraid he did the same they had done to me. They deserved it. They judged him by their own standards. He noticed it. Of course he did. Their faces showed it all. So he told Alberto that they could keep the key code. He was better than them, and he trusted his friends even they didn't deserve it. It was fine for them at first, because they thought that if he didn't have the facility's key code, they were the only ones that could go in. So if Ramon trusted them, he was reliable. Of course, in the way home to help Paco to keep Sandra and Alicia entertained, they thought he had given in too fast to be as money grabber as he was, and that maybe the key code was not necessary to get into the warehouse, and that maybe, in the end, they called Ramon to see what he was doing. They caught him at the kitchen, at Sandra's kitchen, and he almost had a fit. He was walking around the flat trying to find the right place to leave the cell, so I didn't suspect he had taken it, or he had been at Sandra's place afterwards trying to hide it. And then his phone rang and mine fell to the ground. He didn't know how to react. At first, he wanted to answer the call. Then he wanted to pick up my phone, which was on the ground in front of the washing machine. Andres' voice shouting through the cell hurried up his reflexes. He bent it down, threw my phone inside the washing machine, and answered Andres. "What are you doing?" Andres asked with sarcasm. "Nothing. I'm doing nothing," Ramon said, gasping for breath. "Where are you?" Andres said relentlessly. "Me? I am," he said almost without breath. "And?" Andres insisted. "And it's not your business," he said almost completely recovered. "I hope you are doing your part. Are you? And I hope you are not at the hangar." Andres dropped. "What the hell hangar? What are you saying? I don't have anything more to do there. What is more, you have the code. Are you paranoid? You are distressing." Ramon said serious. Andres was happy with that. It didn't seem an excuse to him. It was more a telling off. He hoped the night was good for Ramon before he went back home. Okay. Andres apologized. "We meet later." "No, I'm staying at a hotel. If I have to deal with you and the two women, I'm going mad. You're the death of me," he said with tiredness.